welcome to Baachu Talk Equity Matters, the fiercely passionate podcast that champions diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging through the power of human leadership stories. Brace yourself for inspiring tales of fearless advocates who dare to challenge the status quo, pushing boundaries and sparking change in every corner of our world. Today's guest is none other than the exceptional Jane Elliott. At 89 years old, she's a globally recognized educator, learner, diversity trainer. Renowned for her contribution, she has been honored with the prestigious National Mental Health Association Award for Excellence in Education. With fearless determination, Jane Elliott unveils the baselessness of prejudice and bigotry, spotlighting their roots in arbitrary divisions. In response to the tragic event of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination in 1968, Jane conceived the groundbreaking Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes exercise. This transformative exercise, now renowned, assigns individuals as inferior or superior solely based on eye color, immersing them in the experience of being marginalized. Jane Elliott's teaching, whether through lectures, workshops, videos, witness the profound impact they have on all who encounter them. Unveiling her insights is akin to facing unyielding foes. Jane dismantles defenses, prompting deep introspection and stirring uncomfortable emotions. We cannot escape discomfort, unease, and penetrating honesty she invokes as she challenges, exposes, and confronts. Amidst moments of starkness, Jane emerges as a paragon, motivating us all to challenge our biases and embracing change. Jane, it's an absolute privilege and pleasure to have you with us at Baachu Talk Equity Matters. Welcome, Jane.
Well, thank you. It's an extreme compliment to me that you would call me. Here I am, an old, but for me, old is an acronym for octogenarian living dangerously, because that's what I am. And that's what I will continue. That's what I'll continue to be for the next 3 months, and then I'll become 90, and I'll be a nonagenarian, and people will call me a nut because I'll be a nonagenarian uttering truth. We do not want to hear the truth in the United States of America.
Yes, we will talk all about it, Jane. But I wish at the age of 89, 90, I'm as energetic and determined like you. I think, listeners, I wish you get this very first thing from Jane. So, Jane, talk us through, where were you born, Jane? And talk us through, how was it growing up in the 1930s?
Oh, my goodness. I was born less than 17 miles from where I'm sitting right now. I was born to what we thought was a Catholic mother and a Baptist father. Right. We found out much later in life that my Baptist father had a mother who had been raised Catholic, and we didn't know that all the time we were young, because she was a devoted Baptist, except that she had been raised Catholic. I only learned that about 5 years ago. But in our house, you did not discuss religion, because my mother was confirmed Catholic. Rather a casual Catholic, and my father was a determined Baptist. So we did not argue about religion, but we fought about everything else that there was to fight about. We were disowned by both the parents, both the Baptist parents and the Catholic grandparents didn't want to have anything to do with us. My Catholic grandfather said to my mother, "I'll never step foot on your property as long as you're married to that man," because my father was a Baptist. And my father said, "Well, all right, that'll work, doesn't it?" So, and my grandfather, my mother's father, never stepped foot on our property, not even when my little sister died. He had my uncle drive him out to the farm, and he sat on the road in a car and told my father that he was sorry she was dead, but we kind of asked for it, didn't we? So I have a really strange attitude toward religion, and particularly now toward the evangelical religion, because of what it's doing to this country. But for years, as far as me personally, I relate positively to those who are the others, because from 1933 until 1940 to 1952, I was tolerated because my mother wanted a boy and she got a girl. So I was the wrong gender from birth. So 1952, I left home, went to college, got a job, got married. So from 1952 until 1968, I was ignored. I know how that feels. Then I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. And from 1968 until today, I have been vilified by my siblings and my mother. My mother's gone, my father's gone, 3 of my siblings are gone, but the anger at my doing the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise is still there in my 2 younger brothers. And I know what the problem is, but I don't have time now to re-educate my brothers, both of whom are civil engineers. I don't have the time. They're going to have to live out their lives absolutely convinced of the rightness of whiteness. And it's all a lie. There are no white people. There are no black people. There are no red people. There are no yellow people. We're all members of the same race, and we're all shades of brown. We've got to get over this idea that came out of the Spanish Inquisition in the 1400s and 1500s and get into the year 2023, and stop talking about race as if it was real. The word, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I got to get this said because I might not get a chance to say it again. The word race came out of race to mean a specific group of people came out of France in 1580. Now think of that. Yeah, did you not know that? And I suspect that you didn't, because that isn't something we learn in any of our education institutions. The word race to mean a specific group of people came out of France in 1580. Those who say, well, this has been going on forever, are absolutely wrong. This started during the Spanish Inquisition, when Torquemada was going to turn everybody Catholic. So he went around killing people who he thought couldn't possibly be Christian. He had killed almost 2,000 people before somebody indicated to him that a lot of those people he had killed were Christians. And at that point, he decided he couldn't tell what your religion was by looking at you. So he had to find a way to decide that you could tell what a person's religion was quickly, who did or did not deserve to die. So he set upon skin color. He called those who were lighter skinned white, because white is the color of goodness and purity. He called those with darker skins black, because black is the color of savagery and evil. There were no white people and no black people on the face of the earth at that time, nor are there today. We are all shades of brown. Torquemada didn't know it. Evidently, we still don't know it. We've got to get that into people's heads. White and black are words that should never have been used to describe human beings. We do not come in those colors. Cats do, hogs do, chickens do, horses do, cattle do. People do not. It's time to get rid of those 2 words. Now, are we all done?
Wow. What a powerful insight already, Jane. I mean, like, So 1933 was born, obviously, very determined, family having, different thoughts of what religions mean to them. And fast forward 1968, like 35 years later, you started Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes. How was your life between then and when you started this Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes? What kind of, I know people might have asked you 1,000 times, but any memories comes between 1933 to 1968?
Oh yeah, my father used to say, you can't judge a book by its cover or a person by its skin. And then he would say, but don't bring any pickaninnies into my house as grandchildren. So here was this man who was a totally moral human being, the most moral human being I have ever met and ever known. It was just awful. What he went through to maintain his morality was just unfortunate. He had 7 children, and his favorite one died at the age of 3. And so I remember my father and how he reacted to that, and how he lived through it and said, don't dwell on it, and kept on moving forward in spite of this favorite child being gone. He went through absolutely horrible times with 7 kids and one gone and 6 remaining, and told us, get an education. What you put in your head, they can't take away from you. So we all went to college, and we all got an education of sorts. But the education was all the same. The education taught all of us the same thing. It taught us the rightness of whiteness. It was a lie. We were taught that Columbus discovered America. And when I became a teacher, I had to teach that Columbus discovered America. Columbus didn't discover America. You can't discover a place where people are already living.
Totally.
Yeah, people from Africa discovered America. And when I said that in my classroom, all hell broke loose. I tell you, parents and teachers and everybody but the administrators were furious. The administrators, when the people went to the administrators and said, you got to fire her, all three of those different superintendents that I had said, she does her job, I'm not firing her, she's doing a good job. I had the support of three good superintendents while I was teaching. If I hadn't been, I'd been fired. But those men knew more than the people in that community did. They knew what constituted good education, and they also knew what constituted indoctrination. Education in this country is about indoctrinating people to make them into good citizens. I don't believe in it. I believe you have to be a citizen of the world. And the world is very, very different. The world is full of diversity, and it ought to be full of equity, and it ought to include inclusion. But it doesn't. Our education doesn't. Our education does not include diversity or equity or inclusion. What was your question? I'll answer your question eventually.
No, Jane, you have been a passionate advocate for over 80 years, and I know that's where we need to get to, but it's amazing. So 1968, do you remember, how did you come out with this thought? Martin Luther King was assassinated. So you were there as a class teacher, that too for third grade class. How old are they? Maybe 9, 10 years old? 7,
9 years old, 9-year-olds.
9-year-olds.
Yeah, and it was in April. Yeah.
April.
And we were studying the Indian unit, which was a misused word. Indian was a misused word. Columbus hadn't reached India, but he thought he was going to reach the east by sailing west. So he called the people he encountered here Indians. They weren't Indians. This isn't India, never has been. But we will call them Indians until they come up against it and say, look, we came from Africa just like all the rest of you did. Africans colonized this land, just as Africans colonized every landmass on the face of the earth. It's time to stop talking as though Europeans made this country what it is today. Without Africans discovering this place, there would have been nothing for Columbus when he got here. But that's not what we teach. We celebrate Columbus Day. We should be celebrating African American Day, but we aren't. Martin Luther King had been one of our heroes of the month in February, along with, unfortunately, Daniel Boone, a whole lot of other white people who killed Native Americans. And he was dead at the hands of an assassin on April 4th. I didn't know that had happened. I was teaching all day. I went home, I was teaching the teepee that my previous year's students, third graders, had made. We were going to put it up in the classroom the next day. We were going to paint it with Indian symbols chosen by white folks. We were going to learn Indian poetry written by white folks. We were going to sing Indian songs written by white folks. And we were going to learn the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, great spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." That was our lesson plan for the next day. I walked into my house, the telephone was ringing. I answered the telephone, it was my sister, and she said, is your television on? I said, no. You better turn it on. Why? They shot him. I said, who'd we shoot this time? It was kind of a joke. Who'd we shoot this time? We were in a shooting mood at that time. She said, Martin Luther King Jr. And oh my God. See, I can't remember that day without getting sick to my stomach, literally sick to my stomach. Because as far as I was concerned, Martin Luther King offered us the hope of being truly human beings. And he was killed because of that. If he and Malcolm X had gotten together, the people who run this show knew that they could upset what this country is about. Those two men could lead their followers into changing what happens in this country where people of different color groups are concerned. And we killed him because of that. We allowed Malcolm X to be killed, and we facilitated the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. He was a threat. To me, he represented hope. And I thought, my God, they've killed hope. Why would anyone kill a man who followed what he read in the Bible? He read and I didn't care about his private life. That was his business. But what he said to the rest of us about how to live as meaningful human beings made good sense to me. I didn't know what to do. I washed the teepee, I dried it, I spread it out on the living room floor, and I watched television. I watched Walter Cronkite interview 3 leaders of the Black community that night. And he said to those 3 men, When our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line? I thought, my God, those are our people. They are my 30th to 50th cousins. How dare he ask that question? So I changed the channel. And there was another famous narrator, newspaper one saying, don't you Negroes think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you Negroes can? How could you not feel anger at the killing of another human being? I know how you could. If you consider that person not quite human, and you have been raised and educated to see them as not quite human, then it's all right to shoot them down. We had learned how to do that. We did it during the Second World War. We did it during the Korean War. We'll do it again when we have to start another war to keep people in their place. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And at that moment, I rolled up the teepee, I threw it into the closet, I shut the door on it, and I decided that the next day, not only were we going to learn the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, great spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins," I decided that I would arrange to have it answered for them. Because I decided that I was going to arrange for some of my students to go through the day as children of other color groups go through the day every day in the United States of America. I decided that the next day I was going to treat a group of my students the way we treat people who are other than white in this country. I didn't know what physical characteristic to use, but I knew that the Nazis used eye color. If you had the wrong color eyes during the Nazi regime, you got sent to the gas chamber. If you were a child and they caught you on the street and you had the wrong color eyes, you had brown eyes, they threw you up into the air and used you for target practice. Eye color has been used to kill people in my lifetime in Germany and now in the United States of America. And it has been in the United States of America. I decided that next morning I was going to treat my students positively or negatively on the basis of the color of their eyes. And because I'm blue-eyed and I couldn't afford to have the people on top also have the teacher be on top, I couldn't afford that. So I decided that brown-eyed people would be on top the first day of that exercise. I had no idea how this would happen, how this would work, because I'm what you call white. I'm okay. I don't have to know how it feels to be treated unfairly because of a physical characteristic over which I have no control. I bask in the enjoyment of knowing that no matter what I do, I will be all right because I have the right color skin, which in fact doesn't exist as a skin color. There are no white people and there are no black people. My husband came home from work. He worked at a factory at that time. He worked on the night shift. He came home and he walked in the door and I was crying. He said, they killed him, didn't they? And he took me in his arms and he said, Jane, it's going to be all right. I said, no, Daryl, it's not going to be all right. They shot a man who represented hope. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to give my third graders a chance to find out how it feels to be treated unfairly on the basis of a physical characteristic over which you have no control. He said, Jane, what are you talking about? I said, Daryl, I'm going to separate my kids according to the color of their eyes and discriminate against those who have the wrong color eyes. He said, Jane, you better not do that. You'll lose your job. I said, Daryl, I don't want to teach in Riceville if I lose my job for doing the right thing. He said, we've got 4 kids to raise. We need that money. I said, Daryl, I'm going to do this exercise. He was right. I should have kept my mouth shut. I should have done what the rest of the teachers did. I should have done what some of them did, which was cheer over the fact that that man was dead. Or what some of them did, which was simply ignore it. Or what some of them did was say, well, it's too bad, but he should have thought about it. He should have known better. I decided I wasn't going to do any of those things. I was going to do what we do in this society on a daily basis to at least a third of our population. We teach children to discriminate against people on the basis of the color of their skin. And when you describe this as groundbreaking, this exercise as groundbreaking, no, it isn't groundbreaking. I learned it from my teachers, from the preacher. I was a Methodist. I went to Sundays, I went to church every Sunday morning and sat there in the pew and looked up at the minister, and behind him was a picture of Jesus Christ. Didn't look like the Jesus that was in the Bible with kinky woolly hair and feet of bronze? No, doesn't look like the real Jesus. It looks like the Jesus that we would be willing to bow to or to kneel to or to pray to. Someone who is closer to my skin color than the color of your hair. And we put that person up there, and that person, and then there's another picture of that person kneeling and praying and looking heaven toward the heaven. Jesus knew that you didn't have to go into heaven to find that other dimension. All you have to do is turn the corner into that other dimension. I don't believe in death. I believe energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Life is energy. That energy that is your life was there before you were born, and it will be still there after you are dead, because energy can neither be created nor destroyed. I believe that my father went into that other dimension. My husband went into that other dimension. My son, my oldest son, went into that other dimension, and they are there. And I don't have to look up to the ceiling to see them. I know that they are right there. But we are not able to communicate with one another, but because now we see through a glass darkly. But in time, we will know. And I honestly believe that. But I didn't think about that day. All I thought about was my third graders have been told by me that there's only one race and we're all members of it. But now I have to go in and explain to them why people are cheering about the shooting of another human being who was one of my 30th to 50th cousins. How am I going to do this? John Dewey was a great educator. He said, we learn by doing. I decided that the next morning I was going to teach my students how it felt to be treated unfairly on the basis of a physical characteristic over which you have no control. And I learned this from this society. This is not groundbreaking. This is what we do in this country on a daily basis. You know it, and I know it. Maybe you don't know it, but I know it because I've watched it for 89 years. I didn't know how it would work. I said the only prayer I ever say at that point, I said, oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Over and over like a mantra. By the time we had been through in that exercise for 10 minutes the next day, I realized that I didn't want to be an instrument of God's peace. I did not want to do what I had decided to do. But once I get into it, once I started it, I saw things that I never recognized because I had been encouraged not to recognize how absolutely dangerous and how horrific racism is. How totally acceptable it is to treat people positively or negatively on the basis of your ignorance about skin color. Because it isn't about skin color, it's about ignorance. That's what racism is. It is reacting ignorantly to the color of some other human being's skin. I didn't know that you could turn a brilliant little third grader into a child who couldn't read or spell within 10 minutes of the exercise because you told them they were stupid and they became what you accused them of being. You told them they didn't take good care of things, and so they trashed things that they shouldn't have trashed. You told them they were violent, and so they became angry and wanted to kill people who were treating them badly. I didn't know about the effects of discrimination based on physical characteristics over which we have no control because I had been on the positive end of it and I hadn't been on the receiving end. I learned so much that day. Oh my God. When I told my blue-eyed people that they weren't as smart as brown-eyed people, little brown-eyed Debbie sitting in the front row looked up at me and said, how come you're the teacher here if you got them blue eyes? And I thought, well, you little shit. And I had never felt that way about a child before. But I was reacting to how she attacked me because of the color of my eyes. And then Alan Moss stood up and said, if she didn't have them blue eyes, she'd be the principal and the superintendent. They're both brown-eyed. And I thought, my God, they're believing this thing. They actually believe it. They're going along to get along. They believe it. I watched a child who came into my room in February, reading at the 6th grade level, unable to read accurately on the day she was on the bottom in that exercise. This child had a steel-trap mind. She never forgot a thing she learned, but on the day she had the wrong color eyes, she could not repeat she couldn't remember the multiplication tables. She couldn't remember how to spell. It was absolutely terrifying. On the other hand, I had in my room that year three or four dyslexic boys who had a lot of problems with reading. On the day they were on the top in that exercise, they read words I knew they couldn't read, and they spelled words I knew they couldn't spell. And at the end of the day, one of them came up to my desk and said, "Mrs. Elliott, where's my spelling paper?" I said, "What do you want it for?" He said, "I want to take it home and show it to my mother. She thinks I can't spell, and I can." And then he started to cry, and so did I, because he didn't learn until April 5th of his third grade year that he could be a speller, because his previous teachers had told him he couldn't. Since they couldn't teach him, that meant he couldn't learn. They never said, "I can't teach him." They said, "You can't learn." If those teachers had learned what I know about dyslexia and what I know about Orton Gillingham phonics, that kid would have been reading at or above grade level when he came into my classroom. He wasn't, because his teachers had failed him. They blamed their failure on him. There must be something wrong with him. That's exactly what we do every day in this country where children of other than what we call white are concerned. We deliberately lower our expectations for them. We force them to live down to our expectations of them. And woe be unto the child who is what we call Black, who exceeds our expectations. We get really upset about those. Make no mistake, we are not vicious, vile, ugly people. We are simply people who have been conditioned to the lie of race, to the lie of the superiority of people based on an amount of a chemical in their skin. It is unreasonable. I didn't realize how unreasonable it was till I saw what happened with my third graders. I sent my kids home. I pulled down the map that day. The ring slipped off my thumb. The map went around and around and around the roller, the way it does in that old Excedrin commercial, which you are too young to remember. And I said, "Well, I've done it again." And one of them said, "Well, that's because you got those brown eyes." And then Alan Moss said, "Her eye color hasn't got nothing to do with it. You know, she never has been able to do that, right?" And I said, "Thank you, Alan," because he was defending me, not as his teacher, but as a member of his race. If my eye color made me inferior, then his eye color, which was the same as mine, might make him inferior. He had to let everybody know that eye color had nothing to do with it. I just didn't know how to pull down the map. I sent him home that day, and that usually they didn't want to go home because we always had exciting things going on in my classroom. They didn't want to go home. Several times they would say, "Why don't we stay overnight? We can just stay overnight, Mrs. Elliott." I said, "Go home. I'm tired." That night, none of them wanted to stay overnight. They couldn't wait to go home and tell their parents what had happened during the day. I went home. I was a little afraid to go home. I was sure there'd be a cross burning in my yard. When I got home, nothing happened except that friends that had decided to, we had some friends who were going out to the lake for a picnic lunch on Saturday night. And those friends called and said, "Rick is sick, so we can't go. We'll have to go another time." Well, Rick was in my classroom, and I knew he wasn't sick, but I said, "Okay, that's fine." So the kids and Daryl and I went out to the lake with our picnic basket. And as we walked toward the lake, there sat Rick and his parents. And as we walked toward their picnic table, somebody said, "Did anybody bring the watermelon and the chicken? We got to have watermelon and chicken if they're going to be here." And Daryl said this. I said, "Forget it. Let's go." Sarah, my daughter, my four kids were just furious at what they were hearing, because for the first time in their lives, they got treated the way children who are other than white in this country get treated every day. First time that had ever happened to them. It wasn't the last time, because for the rest of their lives, as long as they lived in Riceville, they got that kind of reaction from many of their peers. They were damned because they had me for a mother, make no mistake about it. So we got through the weekend. I was dreading Monday because I knew I was going to reverse that exercise on Monday. And I had heard what the blue-eyed boys said they were going to do to the brownies when the blueies got on top. And I thought, there's going to be bloodshed here, and I've caused this problem. This is going to be ugly. And I went to school really concerned, walked into the classroom, changed the situation so that now the blue-eyed people were on top, the brown-eyed people were on the bottom. And I watched those blue-eyed kids refuse to be as mean to the brownies as the brownies had been to them. It was the most amazing thing. They said, the boys in the boys' restroom said, on Friday what they were going to do with those brownies when they got on top. When they got on top, they didn't treat others the way they had been treated by them. We got through the day with the blue-eyed people on top with a lot less viciousness and a lot less discomfort. And that was on Monday. And on Tuesday, each child had to write a 4-paragraph composition telling how the child felt on Monday, how the child felt on Friday, what discrimination is, and who Martin Luther King Jr. was. After they'd finished writing, we got in the magic circle, and in the magic circle, whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about, and we'll solve it in some way. So we got in the magic circle. I said, now, kids, I need to know. You blue-eyed kids said you were going to get even with the brownies when you got on top. You didn't get even with them. Why didn't you get even with them? And almost in a chorus, they said, because we found out how it feels to be on the bottom. We didn't want to make anybody feel the way we felt when we were on the bottom. And I thought, oh my God, if that is what has come out of this exercise, if that's the only thing that has come out of this exercise, then the pain and the discomfort and the anger and the disassociation was worth it, because my blue-eyed kids found out how it feels to be on the bottom and refused to do that to other people. Can you imagine what kind of community we would have in the United States of America if everybody realized that this is the way it feels to be on the bottom? You don't want to treat people the way you were treated when you were on the bottom. I think that's the only hope we have in this country, that those whom we have called Black, who aren't Black and who never were, but those who have darker skin, don't want to get even with us. They want to get equity. They don't want to get equality. I don't believe in equality. You and I will never be equal. I will never be as young as you are. I will never know the things that you know. You'll probably never be able to bear a child, which I've done 4 times because I like children. There are things that I have been able to do that you'll never be able to do. We'll never be equal, but we are guaranteed equitable treatment under the law. How would it be to live in a society where everybody was treated equitably, where we all are treated with justice instead of goodness for just us? And in this country, justice is for just us. We've got to change. The first thing we have to do is change the language. We've got to stop talking about race unless we talk about the human race. There's only one race. So quit this discussion about race. We've got to forget some of the things that we find so valuable. CRT, critical race theory. That is, every time I hear it, my blood begins to boil. Because number one, critical, in other words, we're going to talk about this in a way that we would criticize this whole thing. Right, go for it. Race, there's only one race. Theory, a theory is an idea. It isn't a fact, it's an idea. If you're going to talk about CRT, call it curriculum respecting truth. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
If we had a curriculum that respects truth, the first thing we would do is do away with all references to race, because there's only one. The word race didn't mean anything until 1580. It still should mean nothing. We are not a specific group of people. We are all members of the same group. Just a few weeks ago, oh my God, we do such ignorant things in this country. And I like Joe Biden, President Biden. I really admire what he's been able to do. But a few weeks ago, he signed legislation making interracial marriage legal. How the devil do you have an interracial marriage unless one of the partners in that union is from outer space? There are no interracial marriages. See, the whole thing is so ridiculous. You can't have an interracial marriage unless you are marrying either a Martian or somebody from another planet. Right. Do you see why I get a little passionate about these things?
100%.
People talk about, yes. It is so prehistoric. Stop thinking. During George Bush's, young George W's administration, we stopped thinking. Ronald Reagan started us down that road, and then here comes W. And I was giving a speech one day, and I said about W, And the kid said, Miss Elliott, don't do that. Because this is the way W did this about, this is a W. Don't do that. I said, why not? Because when he does that, what he really means is this. I thought, oh my Lord, you're probably right. I guess I won't do that anymore. You see, young people at that time knew more than I did. They had watched him, they had listened to him, they had seen that what he was saying didn't make any sense, and they criticized him. That's wonderful. We should criticize our leaders if they have no brains. Absolutely. But unfortunately, right now, we will support one. 40% of our population is supporting of one who is, anyway, I learned more that day, that first day of that exercise, than I wanted to know. And when I went down to the teacher's lounge at noon, because I was so upset about what was going on in my classroom, there were 8 or 9 teachers in the lounge, and I told them what was going on with my classroom and how upset I was about how my brown-eyed people were treating my blue-eyed people that first day. The only reactions I got to that were, one of the 3rd grade teachers, the other 3rd grade teacher said, I don't know how you have time for all that extra stuff. It's all I can do to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, I had seen the way she taught reading, writing, and arithmetic, and I thought, you might as well do the extra stuff because you aren't doing that very well. The other one, and she was about 62 years old at the time, had been molding young minds for many years, looked up at me, and after I had talked about our anguish at the killing of Martin Luther King, said, in that group of so-called educators, I thought, I don't know why you're doing that. I thought it was about time somebody shot that son of a bitch. Nobody frowned. Nobody gasped. Every one of those teachers either smiled or laughed and nodded because she had expressed their feelings perfectly. And as the most senior member of the group, she had the most right to do so. And at that moment, I decided that I would not stop the exercise at noon. I would continue that through the day, and I would repeat it on Monday with the other people on the top. No student of any age will ever leave my presence with those attitudes unchallenged. I may not be able to change your attitude, but I can challenge your attitude. And you have to prove to me that white people are superior to people of all other color groups. And you can't do it because it isn't true. It isn't true. And for those who would say it is true, look at it. No, read the book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. Before you say one more word about the superiority or the rightness of whiteness, read the book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. And another way we reaffirm our brilliance and our greatness and our holiness is with Christianity. Read Anthea Butler's book, White Evangelical Racism, before you say one more word about how Christ loves all of us. You've got to be the number one problem in the United States of America, and because the United States of America is considered a world leader, number one problem worldwide is the problem of considering people positively or negatively on the basis of the color of their skin. It is ridiculous. It is primitive. It is unreal. It is the epitome of ignorance. We have to do away with it. So I learned so much that, oh God, I learned so much that first day, and I relearned so much the second day that I showed the essays that my students wrote to my mother. She showed them to the editor of the local paper. He printed them in the local paper, and then all hell broke loose. Oh my Lord. You think what's going on today is unfortunate. You should have been in my position the day after people in Riceville found out what I had done with those poor little 9-year-olds. And just in the last 5 years, I tell you, it doesn't, it's interesting. A professor from the University of Iowa has written a book calling the exercise inhuman, beastly, brutalizing children. And it hasn't yet occurred to him that what I did with little white children for several hours on 2 days is what we have been doing with children who are other than white in this country for the last 300 years. It hasn't occurred to him that what we have been doing with what we call black and brown and red and yellow children has been dehumanizing, has been brutalizing, has been savage, has been unethical, has been unchristian, has been all these things that he accuses the person who did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise of being. He has several degrees. I don't think he learned anything with any of them. I can't imagine somebody having a PhD, several PhDs, and not understanding, when he saw the film The Eye of the Storm, not understanding that what those little white kids went through for a day apiece is what little children of color, other colored groups, go through in this country every day of their lives. He doesn't get that yet. Why doesn't he know that? Why doesn't he know that? And why did my administrators, all four of them eventually, understand what I was doing, approve what I was doing, support what I was doing, and not call me vicious, brutalizing, sadistic? But you see, if I am being brutalizing, sadistic, and dehumanizing during that eye color, then what are we pale, stale people doing every day in the United States of America?
Wow. 55 years ago, Jane, you did that exercise with your 9-year-old children. Did you follow up with your children when they grew up, entered the career, have their own grown-ups? And was there any heartwarming stories about how they are your first batch of honest children who have a nice perspective of the world? Talk us through about your very first batch children when they grow up, and any other stories relating to that, how they were the beacon of.
About 10 years after we did the first blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise, a film crew came to Riceville to film those kids at their 10-year class reunion. I think 10 or 5, probably 5-year class reunion from high school. And I called them and said, if you wouldn't mind, I called a couple of the kids, and said, if you wouldn't mind, there's a film crew who would like to film your class reunion because you were some of the kids who went through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. Okay, they can do that. So the film crew came to Riceville and filmed these young adults, some of whom had children, discussing how they felt when they went through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise and how it has affected their lives since. One of them said, whenever I see somebody doing one of those ugly things and making one of those racist statements, I say to myself, well, I've been through that, and it's just skin color they're talking about. That doesn't make a difference in the kind of person they are. The kid said at that time, every child should have to go through that exercise at some time because it changes the way you see your world and the people who are in it. I sat there and watched those kids. I think it was their 5-year class reunion from high school. I watched them say things that I couldn't have scripted in a better way. The things that they said, and everybody should take a look at I think the name of that film is A Class Divided. Everybody should take a look at that, because here are these kids who came back 5 years after they graduated from high school, sat down together in a group and discussed with the teacher who had done this horrible thing to them, how it affected them after the exercise, when they were no longer 9, but when they were 19, and now when they're 29, and now when they're 59, they still agree that it was one of the most important things that happened to them. It changed the way they see their world. I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duck deuce, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. You can't do that if you continue to teach that Columbus discovered America and there are 5 different races of people on the face of the earth based on 5 different color groups. I'm good. Now, this is going to sound childish, but you just put up with it. I believe that you have the answer to racism in your hand. Just give each of your fingers the name of a color group. The thumb should be the white color group because it's the smallest. Only 15 to 18% of the population of the earth is classified as white. Did you know that? Only 15 to 18% of the population of the earth is classified as white. The first finger is what would be the black finger, because these people have tried to point out to us what's wrong. We aren't going to listen. The third finger is the tallest. It represents the brown group, because this is the largest, numerically, this is the largest group of people on the face of the earth. We are all brown. There are no yellow people and there are no red people. So these four don't exist. The only one that exists is this one right here, the brown group. Now, if you bring all those, yeah, I know what you're thinking. You bring all those groups together, you can make something that can punch through the walls of bigotry and ignorance.
Yes.
You can't do it individually, but you can do it if you work at it together. We could change this situation. And now when somebody gives me the finger, I say, good for you. You know about the brown race, don't you? And they said, that's not what that means. That's what it means to me. And I say to them, you have to remember, perception is everything. What you mean by what you did isn't what's important. What's important is how it is perceived. And if I perceive this as meaning, this is the brown group and we're all members of it, then I can't be damaged or upset by what you think this means. The only thing that's important about this is how I see it, and I see this as meaning, see, I know there's only one race. It's the brown race, and we're all members of it. And we can put it together and change this situation if we choose to. Now, I know that sounds childish and oversimplistic, but it's not as childish as believing that there are 5 different color groups and 5 different races of people on the face of the earth. That was something people believed for 480 years ago. It's time to get over it. Stop calling yourself educated if you still believe in 5 different color groups and 5 different races. There aren't. There's only one. There's only one. And this is it. It's the brown race. Get over it, people.
Yes, Jay.
Now, a whole lot of, in the United States, people who consider themselves black have had to work hard to get any kind of positive reaction from those who aren't black. So they don't like me saying, you aren't black. People who are white haven't had to work very hard to get recognition because it's all about them. So they resent being told, you aren't white, get over it. Yellow and red people would just as soon not be called red, because that was a lie when we said it in the first place. We use color groups to support our ignorance about people. If we can look at you and say, well, you're slightly yellow, so you know what we know what you know about you, you must be highly intelligent. I was on a bus riding from a hotel in New York City to the airport one day, and there were a group of us talking about what's going on in this country. And there was a woman, an Asian woman, and she said, well, you're talking about stereotypes and negative stereotypes. Sometimes positive stereotypes are painful. I said, well, tell us about that. She said, well, because I'm a member of the yellow race, I'm expected to be highly intelligent and really good at math. I can't multiply, subtract, add, or divide. I can't do it. Math is really hard for me, but I have to live up to that positive stereotype that isn't real. She said it's based on how people feel about the color of my skin and what I represent to them. And I thought, oh my God, how wonderful to live with a positive stereotype. And then I thought, Jane, you idiot, you have taken advantage of that positive stereotype all your life. It has never been difficult for me to take advantage of the rightness of whiteness. That has never been seen as a disadvantage in this country. And we have never talked about the fact that we are a numerical minority worldwide. And we will be, in the United States of America, a numerical minority, again, very shortly. Within 25 years, what we call white people in the United States of America will be a numerical minority. And that's the reason for the Proud Boys, QAnon, the 3%ers, the KKK, the Oath Keepers, the whole group, pale, stale males who are scared to death about the fact that they are afraid that those people of that other color group are going to believe that we really mean the golden rule when we say, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Now, if white folks, what we call white folks in this country, treat others of other colors the way we want to be treated, we white folks are in real trouble. Because what if all those other color groups think we want to be treated the way we have treated other people? See, I don't believe in the golden rule. I don't believe in treating people the way I want to be treated. That's totally egotistical. I believe in the platinum rule that says, do unto others as others would have you do unto them. Treat others the way they want to be treated. And in order for me to do that, I can't walk up to the nearest person who doesn't look like me and say to that person, how do you people want to be treated? I have to get a book. I have to read as many books as I can about those who don't look like I do, so that I'll know what their experience has been in this country. And it hasn't been the same as what my experience has been. But all of that is left out of education in the United States of America. What other people want isn't important. What we, pale, stale people, have decided they should want is what's important. And now we're going to be on the receiving end of it, and we're scared to death. We're saying, Jews will not replace us. Wait a minute, fools. Without Jews, there would be no Christians. The first 5 books of the Old Testament came out of the Torah, didn't they? Take a look at it and realize that without Jews, there would be no Christians, there'd be no Baha'is, there'd be no, all these Christian-related religions would not exist without the Jews. Without what we call blacks, there would be no what we call whites. People left the area of the equator and moved and populated every landmass on the face of the earth without any modern technology. Good Lord, people. Just see, when I get really frustrated when I think about what we didn't learn in school. 3 things you shall remember. Without blacks, there'd be no whites. All I am is a faded black person. As we moved farther and farther from the equator, our bodies were exposed to less and less sunlight, so our bodies produced less and less melanin. So our hair, our skin, and our eyes got lighter. Our brains didn't get smaller and they didn't get bigger. It just changed the color of our skin, our hair, and our eyes. If you really believe in the brightness of whiteness and that anybody who has darker skin is dumb, then you have to realize, as you walk along a sandy beach in California in the summertime, you look around and you think, oops, in the summer, whites get dumber. Because those white women are out there trying to get brown. And you're thinking, you fools, if you believe what you've been taught all your life, don't get tan, because it just proves that you've lost some of your intelligence. You see, we do these totally ridiculous things in the name of beauty, in the name of greed, and in the name of Christianity. We turned a man who had kinky woolly hair and feet of bronze into a man that we feel comfortable praying to. And we look up because that's the way the artist drew him. But in fact, you don't have to look up to find it. It's right here. You're just going to turn that corner into that other dimension. And if you've done things right while you're in this dimension, you may be really happy in that other dimension. I hope. I learned things I didn't. I showed my father the first film that was made in my classroom. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation filmed The Exercise the second time I did it, the following year. And they sent me a copy of that. And I took that up to the hotel that my husband and I owned and my parents were living in. And I showed it to my mother and my father. My father was probably 60 years old at that time. And he sat there and watched those little 3rd graders going through that blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. And when it was over, this man who had raised 6 kids and lost 1 stood up, took his red handkerchief out of his back pocket, blew his nose, wiped his eyes, and said, I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old. I will never forget that as long as I live. So when a man writes a book saying how brutalizing this was, all I have to do is think of my father, who never went to college, saying, I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old. It's been an interesting experience living with the results of saying, you don't have to be white to be right. In fact, you aren't white, so get over it.
Totally, Jane. So when was the very first time? Obviously, your administrators were happy, they were supportive, and you are doing that in your school. Do you remember the very first time that you faced the challenge of discussing race and racism? And how did you absorb that heat?
My first superintendent, Donald Johnson, never let any of that heat come to me. That was his job. An administrator is a flack catcher. It's their job to catch the flack and keep it away from their teacher, their educators. And that's what he did. He never let that come to me in any way, shape, or form. He took it. He read the articles in the newspaper. He read the letters that he got. He read some of the letters that I got from people who thought that was an absolutely awful thing to do. And he just put them in the proper file, which was the wastebasket, and kept right on hiring me to teach third grade. Because the second year after I did the exercise, I had a child in my classroom who could not read to save his soul. And his mother called me and asked me to come into her house in the summertime and said, "There's something I have to tell you about my son." I said, "Okay, what is it?" "He is dyslexic. You won't know how to teach him. We're taking him to Rochester, Minnesota 3 times a week. They will teach him how to read. You don't have to teach him how to read. All you have to do is read to him the science and social studies and the math problems, the story problems in the math book, and he'll take care of the rest of it himself. We have people in Rochester, Minnesota who will teach him how to read." I watched this kid go from a child who was covered with psoriasis, who was scared every time I'd come near him and ask him a question, he'd do this and scoot under his table because he had been hit by teachers so often, kindergarten to third grade, that he expected to be hit. And I thought, what is going on here? I watched that child start to stand up, to sit up, to listen, to lose. By the time the end of the year, he only had one little dime-sized spot of psoriasis in the inside of his elbow. The rest of it was all gone because he wasn't nervous anymore. He didn't have to worry about somebody hitting him because he couldn't see words the way they're written or hear words the way they're said. And I watched what happened with that kid, and I thought, my son had a variety of the same things, and he was being treated the same way by teachers. In fact, I took him out of the other third grade room and put him in my classroom. I had to teach my son for a year because the other third grade teachers were so brutal to him. Not because he couldn't learn to read, but because of who his mother was. So anyway, I taught him for a year, and I watched that other person's son learn to read. And okay, that summer I took a course in Orton, Slinger, and phonics in Rochester, Minnesota. It was my absolute joy and delight and luck to be taught how to teach children to read by Paula Rome and Jean Osmond, who used the Orton-Gillingham method. It was absolutely fantastic. I went back to school that fall, separated my kids according to not the color of their eyes, but according to their reading ability, and taught those that were obviously dyslexic how to read. They came to my room reading at the first grade level and third grade. Some of them had been in school for 4 years, 5 years. One of them had been in preschool, had been in kindergarten, first, second. And this was her 5th year in school. She was in third grade because of all the trouble she had learning to read. When she was in my room, she came in reading at the upper first grade level, left 9 months later reading at the 4th grade level, and her independent reading level was 6th grade because she learned how to read. Dyslexic. It runs in her family, comes down through her father. Most of the kids you're going to teach who are dyslexic are males. You need to realize that this is a male problem. I watched kids learn to read because of that course that would never have read if they hadn't had a teacher who knew how to teach the dyslexic child. Every teacher in every classroom in every school in the United States of America has to know how to teach the dyslexic child, because from 20 to 30% of our civilization are dyslexic. That's the way it is. We need to realize that and get over the idea that, well, we'll keep them in school until they're in 6th grade, and then they'll drop out because they can't stand any more of this nonsense. We'll push them out. That's what we do. We'll push them out. They'll drop out. Then they'll get involved with the police. Then they'll end up in a prison. Once they get in that prison, they'll teach themselves to read because it wasn't done when they were in school. Their fathers paid lots of tax money to get those kids educated, but teachers only have to educate 68%, 72%, 76%. The rest of them are just, they're not going to amount to anything. So just pass them on and get them out of here. That's what a principal said to me when he gave me my class rule the year the film The Eye of the Storm was made. He stopped me in the hall room, and this man was brilliant. But he stopped me in the hall and he said, "Miss Elliott, here's a list of your students. These kids aren't going to learn to read. Pass them on and get them out of here. They're never going to amount to anything anyway." And I thought, and I thought some really ugly thoughts. And then I went to the office and I looked through the cumulative files, and all those kids had high math scores, low reading and spelling scores. And I thought, oh, Mr. B, you have done me such a huge favor. These kids who nobody else could teach to read are going to be reading at fourth grade level when they leave my classroom. And I know how to do that. And I just chuckled and chortled when I looked at that classroom. And to this day, every time I remember that day, I think, if he had known what was going to happen, would he not have put those kids in my room? And would they never have learned to read? And would Raymond Hansen never have become a lawyer? He was one of those kids. And would Rex Kozak never have become a teacher? He was one of those kids. Would those kids not have succeeded if they hadn't been in my classroom for 9 months? It was the best favor any administrator ever did for me, was to give me those kids. And the next year, did the same thing. And I went to the office and I said, "Look, I know why you're doing this, but you need to realize that I'm going to take these kids this year and they're all going to learn to read. But this isn't really fair to these kids because they only have one another as their models. They need to be in a classroom where there are kids who have no problem reading, who will see so that they won't have to see themselves as less than. It's time to stop this ability grouping. And instead of ability grouping, insist that every teacher in every classroom in this school knows how to teach every child. Then you don't have to do this ability grouping. If you had teachers who knew how to teach every child, and there's a way to do that, most of the problems that kids have in school, those non-readers, are dyslexic children. If every teacher would take a course in Orton, Slingerland phonics, every teacher would know how to teach every child to read. We could empty our prisons.
What a powerful message, Jane. Jane, obviously you started Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes with your class, grade 3, and you always thought, whenever students come to grade 3, did you went on and tried an experiment on any other classes or even outside school, and how was it?
Number one, it was never an experiment. And in an experiment, you do something to learn something from those people that you're dealing with.
Yes.
It's illegal and unethical to experiment with people without their knowledge or without their permission. This exercise was never an experiment. I wasn't trying to learn anything from them. I was trying to teach them something. I did it with third graders as long as I was teaching at the third grade level. But shortly after I was on the Johnny Carson show, people in a nearby community, the Rotarians in a nearby community, asked me to come to their Rotary Club meeting at noon and talk to the people in the Rotary Club about the Johnny Carson show. Yes. And I thought, yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. They didn't let women in at that time. Only men were allowed to be in the Rotary at that time. And I thought, they'll invite me to dance on their tables, but they won't invite me to be a member of their group. I'm going to fix these boys. So the person who called me said, "Can you do it?" And I said, "You want to put them through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise?" He said, "Yeah, let's do that." I said, do you have job security? He said, "I'm the boss where I work." I said, "Let's do it." So we put the Rotarians at their... Oh, Lord. They didn't know what was going to happen. We separated them according to eye color. When they came in the room, I pushed those blue-eyed people over there in the corner, stay over there. And I brought the brown-eyed people to get their food at the line. And in the meantime, my daughter had made great big signs that said, "Blue-eyed people and dog keep out. If I have only one life to live, let me live it as a brown. Is it true browns have more fun?" All the symbols and ridiculous statements and the advertising slogans that were around at that time about males and females, the whole thing, we had them on the wall. And these guys were upset in a hurry. And I told the brown-eyed people, "Go ahead." And those tables were set up for the brown-eyed people with the salt and pepper and the things that they needed. The blue-eyed people's tables were still standing against the wall, all folded up. I said, if you blue-eyed people want a table to sit on, you better set those tables up. So they had to go to work and set up those tables while the brown-eyed people were going down the line, filled their plates, when the women sat down and commenced to eat. Blue-eyed people became immediately absolutely furious. While they were eating, they had a big roll of paper for the tablecloths. They had torn off a long strip of that paper and made a great big sign that said, "Elliott, go home." Well, they misspelled my name, but somebody helped them with going home. They spelled my name wrong. Lots of people do. I looked at that and I thought, oh, this isn't going to be good. They were furious. So they finally got to eat. And then he introduced me and he said, "This is Jane Elliott." And I said, well, and at that point, when I stood up and started to talk, blue-eyed people commenced to leave. 2/3 of them walked out the door. Put up with this bullshit. And that's what they said. We don't have to put up with this bullshit. And I thought, isn't that nice that they don't have to put up with this? But people of color have to put up with it all day, every day. And they not only have to put up with it, they have to smile while it's happening to them. And they have to become comedians. And they have to become musicians. And they have to become actors. And they have to become people who can pretend that it's all right in a way that will make us appreciate them and laugh at what we have done to them. Think of the dehumanizing that goes on in this country on a daily basis because of the people who are running the show and who will try to re-elect somebody who believes all this crap is right. I watched those people become as angry and as unable to perform as my third graders had been, my 9-year-olds had been. And I thought, well, I'll never be asked to talk to Rotarians again. But interestingly enough, in Osage, they have a Foreign Students Day over Thanksgiving vacation because all the schools, colleges, and universities are closed over Thanksgiving because we pilgrims came here and killed people in order to take over this land. But and we are thankful for that. Anyway, they invite foreign students who are going to college here to come to Osage for the Thanksgiving weekend.
Yes.
And they called and asked me if I would talk to their meeting on that Thanksgiving weekend with all those foreign students in the group. And I did, and I enjoyed it. But a whole lot of the people who were in that organization ordinarily didn't show up because I made them want to throw up. And I understood that. I understand that to this day. I know that there was one man who was so angry that later on, much later on, when he was in a motorized wheelchair, and when he'd see me coming toward him on the street, he would whip that thing around and go in the other direction just as fast as he could because he didn't want to see me face to face on the street in Osage, Iowa. It has been like, people, think about what it is you're doing. Think about what you're reacting to. Think about your anger and your sense of being mortified because of something that happened to you for less than a half hour, an hour maximum, 2 hours maximum on one day in your life. And you're still angry about it. Apply that to what happens to a person that we call black or brown or yellow or red in the United States of America, because we have the power, as because we're what we call white, to mistreat others on a daily basis and to say, we'll pray for you.
Obviously,
think about that.
Totally, Jane. I mean, like, what a profound thing, and that just brings me to the question. Like, many people believe prejudice is learned from a very young age. In your view, at what age are we human beings capable of questioning that? Oh, yeah, I am biased, and is unlearning prejudice possible at a young age?
Well, absolutely. We'd better pray that it is, because if it isn't, once we so-called white people become a numerical minority in this country, are we going to appreciate being treated the way we have treated those in the past? We have to pray, and we have to be determined to change the level of ignorance where skin color is concerned in this country. We start with it prenatally. A group of women who deliver babies called me and asked me in Los Angeles a couple of years ago, asked me if I would come and talk to them what do you call them? There's a word for that. Okay. Anyway, they asked me if I would come and talk to this group of people who deliver babies. And I said, why would you want to ask me? I'm an old white woman. I don't know what people, women of color, would know. And they said, we want you to talk to them because we are in this group because we know that women of color, Black women particularly, don't get the same treatment in the delivery room. They and their baby don't get the same treatment that white women do. We are all nurses. We have all worked in delivery rooms. We have decided that we are going to create a situation so that women of any color can come and be treated fairly while they're delivering their babies because we're going to be the ones who deliver those babies. I said, do you realize the statement that you are making about the medical profession in the United States of America? And this woman said, absolutely. We don't dare say it out loud. We can say it to you, and you can tell us what we need to do in order to not have that happen with women of color when their babies are being delivered. If we knew the numbers concerning those who are other than white, who don't survive the delivery room, we would be absolutely furious. That is not something we talk about. We try really, really hard not to believe that anyone who has taken the Hippocratic Oath and said they will do no harm would deliberately allow a child born to a woman of color not to survive the delivery room. Women become midwives because they want every child and every pregnant woman to be treated fairly in the delivery room. You shouldn't have to do that. In view of the amount of money that we spend to educate members of the medical profession, you shouldn't have to protect people from the people who are trained to help them to survive. And that's what those midwives told me. And I said, I can't believe this, but here's what I know. And I told them what I know. And the women of color in that group said, you know what you're talking about. You're absolutely right. Yes, that's exactly what is happening. How do we call ourselves a Christian nation? Mm-hmm. How do we continue to do the things that we were doing when I was 33, and now we have perfected it to where we can guarantee that those who look like me are going to survive? And we had a leader for 4 years who said we're going to build a wall along the southern border of the United States so that those brown-eyed people can't get in here because brown-eyed people reproduce too rapidly. Those are his words. And people want to reinstate him in the presidency. Oh my God. You see, I'm too old for this.
Yes, Jay.
I'm too old. I know things that you aren't supposed to say. I say things that no one wants to hear. He and his evangelical supporters have arranged for me not to say things on college campuses that will upset the evangelicals and the people who support the members of the Republican Party who support that man. Now, I don't want to talk about politics here. This isn't about politics. This is about survival of the fittest. And we in this country have decided that survival of the fittest means pale, stale males will continue to run the show. This cannot be continued. This is not going to be continued. And we're going to have to help those young pale males realize that I don't want to get even with men. There's no way I can get equal to men. I already have something they can never have. I can't be equal to men. However, I deserve to be treated equitably. Yes. And every person deserves to be treated equitably. And the only way what we call white men, are going to survive in the future is if they decide that we are all members of the same race. I wear this shirt deliberately. What does it say on it? God created one race, the human race. Human beings created racism. We created racism. Anything you create, you can destroy. If we decided to destroy racism, we could do away with it in one generation. I've proven that with the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. People who leave my classroom are less racist in their behavior for the rest of their lives than they were before they were in my classroom, because they found out how it feels to be on the bottom, and they don't want to make anybody feel the way they felt when they were on the bottom. They also recognize the ignorance of treating people positively or negatively based on the color of their skin. That is so absolutely essential where educators are concerned, that if you don't do it, you don't lose your job. If you don't teach students the truth about race, then is when you should lose your job. Not while you teach the truth, but when you continue to teach the lie, that should be reason for you not being, people not continuing to pay you to miseducate their children.
100%, Jane. Jane, as you rightly alluded to, there are a lot of people who want to do it, but then they are nervous about it. So you often require people doing this exercise to grapple with very difficult emotional truths about themselves and society, which we just talked about. How do you think we can create a space where people feel safe enough to be vulnerable with themselves and with each other?
If we'd practice the platinum rule, that might do it. Do unto others as others would have you do unto them. Learn something. If we would truly educate people instead of indoctrinating them, if we'd teach them the truth instead of perpetuating the lie, you'll never get this solved as long as you're teaching the lie of the rightness of whiteness. And that's what we do in this country. And we do it, and you do it all over the world. You know you do. I know you do. We judge people negatively or positively on the basis of how they are treated in the United States of America. We are the leaders of the Western world. We're leading in the wrong direction. We have to start teaching that we have to teach the truth at the K through 12 and then 12 through 16. But we aren't doing that. We start in kindergarten teaching the lie, and you are expected to perpetuate that lie for as long as those children, as long as they live. They're expected to regurgitate what they learned in the elementary building. It's a lie. But teachers, that's what teachers learn. You can't teach what you don't know. And I'll never, oh Lord, I hired Paula Rome, who was the one who taught me how to teach the dyslexic child, to come to the Riceville School in the evening and talk to the teachers, the faculty members, and the administrators about dyslexia and the effect it has on the learning situation. The first grade teacher said to me, I don't need to hear that. I know enough. I already have my BA. I know all I need to know. And I thought, where did you go to school that you learn all you need to know? I still don't know all I need to know. I'll never know all I need to know. But she knows enough after 4 years of college at a really, really, really inferior kind of education system in a college that, okay. Anyway, she knows all she needs to know. That's the danger of people who have lots of degrees. They know all they need to know. They passed all the courses. And nobody said to them, wait a minute, you aren't white. Because if anybody said that to them in a classroom, they'd drop out of that class. They'd drop out of school and they'd go someplace where people would tell them the truth. No. The teacher who says you aren't white, and who says you aren't black, you aren't yellow, you aren't red, you're all shades of brown. A man named Todd Mealy has written a book about the exercise and about me, and it's called Shades of Brown. I thought that was the most brilliant title I ever heard of. He's absolutely right. We are all shades of brown. Get a copy of that book and read it. You aren't going to like it, but read it anyway, because it says very plainly, racism is a chosen belief. we choose to be or not to be racist. There is no gene for racism. There's no gene for homophobia. There's no gene for sexism. There's no gene for anti-Semitism. Those are all things you have to be carefully taught. And you have to work hard to learn them. You have to suspend reality from K through 12 in order to absorb what you are being taught in the social studies classes in schools in the United States of America. You have to agree to something that isn't true. If you want to pass this course, you'd better be able to regurgitate what the teacher has said. And if the teacher says that Columbus discovered America, then that's the way it is. And so you sit there and you think, wait a minute, this is, and kids would say, can that be? And I'd say, no, that can't be, but that's what I have to teach you. But now the truth is that this landmass and every other landmass on the face of the earth was discovered by people from Africa. And all of you students, those of you who think you're white, are just black people who faded over the centuries. Nobody wants to hear that. And no teacher wants to follow me. Fourth grade teachers had to undo everything I had done. And one of the fourth grade teachers and her students told me, Mrs. So-and-so spends half an hour every day telling us what a bad teacher you were. And I say, well, do you think you could have spent your half hour in a better way? Yeah, but that's what we have to do. We have to sit there and listen for half an hour every day while she tells us what a bad teacher you were. I say, do you know? Yeah. And this is an educator.
Jane, that's amazing. Jane, but now we are going to enter into a rapid random fire questions round. There is no right or wrong answer, but it just comes from your decades-long experience. So fast answers, whatever comes in your mind. Are we ready? Shall we start?
You don't want to do that. You don't want me to say whatever comes into my mind. I'll be careful. Go ahead.
Imagine if the world has a prejudice-free day. What activities or event would you organize to celebrate it?
To celebrate a prejudice-free day? Oh, Lord, I would organize a situation in which people danced with, visited with, enjoyed people of all different so-called color groups as equal human beings. I would say to them, look, people, if you pale, stale males and females want your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren to survive into the future, you'd better find someone of color to marry, to reproduce with, because the amount of melanin that you have in your skin is going to determine the length of your life in the future. As the hole in the ozone layer once again begins to get larger, it was getting smaller for a while, but now, because of a president that didn't believe in such things, the hole in the ozone layer has gotten larger. We are back to lots and lots of fossil fuels. The hole in the ozone layer is getting larger and larger, so more and more sunlight is being allowed to come into our environment, and more people, pale faces, are dying of melanoma, which is a skin color that you get because you don't have enough protection from the rays of the sun in your skin. And melanoma travels all over your body. It doesn't just stay on your skin. It travels all over your body. If we were to have that experience, I'd say, everybody find somebody who's other than pale. If you're going to reproduce for the future, find someone who's of a darker color so that your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren can survive in the future. That's the first thing I'd say. I would insist. I have a daughter who's married to a Saudi Arabian. I have two half Saudi Arabian granddaughters. I have one who's adopted, she has adopted a Mexican child. He isn't like the rest of them, but he's got brown eyes. He's gorgeous. So are the Saudi Arabians' grandchildren got brown eyes. They're gorgeous. But you see, I didn't teach my children to dislike those who didn't look like them. I taught my children to look at people as human beings and never, ever to say to anybody, when I see you, I don't see you black. Oh my God. Oh my. A woman walked up to me one day because I was going to be the speaker. This pale-faced woman walked up to me and said, Mrs. Elliott, I don't see color. I said, I knew that before you said it. Well, hi. because if you saw color, you wouldn't wear that shirt with those pants. She said, you don't know what I'm saying. I said, I know exactly what you're saying. If you don't see color, you wouldn't have if you saw color, you wouldn't have your hair that color. She said, I'm offended. I said, so am I.
Oh.
But you see, you're offended because I am saying I see color. Color is extremely important and has been a negative in this country for the last 300 years. It would be to your advantage if you'd start seeing color as a positive and teach your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren to see color as a positive. It could save their lives. I don't have to listen to this. I said, that's right, you don't. She got away from me just as fast as she could. But I don't think she will ever forget the day she told me, I don't see color. Another one said to me, I don't see color. I said, wait a minute, because I hear it all the time. And these are adults, so-called adults. Have you ever dressed a chicken? And she thought I meant, have you ever put clothes on a chicken? I meant, have you ever cut a chicken open? Well, no. Well, I said, try it sometime. And you're going to find out that under the skin, we're all very, very colorful. Our insides are extremely colorful. We depend on that. Well, I don't have to listen. That's right, you don't. But you need to understand that it would be a good idea if you never again said to anyone, when I see you, I don't see you black. Because the minute you say black, they know that you see them black. And you have the freedom to say to them, I can ignore the largest organ on your body, which is your skin, in order for me to be comfortable when I am in your presence. First, you have to agree that I don't see the largest organ on your body. And they look at me like, oh, this is awful. I said, hey, you've had it one time in your life from me, and I'm getting paid to do this. And you've been getting paid in your job not to do this. You in your job are getting paid not to participate in racist behavior. And you just asked me to participate in your racist statement and to approve your racist statement. I can't. You do see color, and you'd better see color because it's extremely valuable. I'm not supposed to say that. I'm supposed to go along to get along. I stopped doing that when I was about 11 years old.
Yes. If you had a magical pair of glasses that could make people instantly empathize with each other, where would you take them for a test run?
If I could create a pair of eyeglasses,
yes,
that would make people automatically able to relate positively to one another. Yeah. We have that. It's called education. We have that. We just refuse to put them on.
Yeah, what about that? Yes.
It's called education. Or we have that. It's called Christianity. Or we have that. It's called Judaism. Or we have that. It's called the Muslim faith. We have that. It's called Father, anyway, the Native Americans, they have that. But we are discouraged from using it because racism is the #1 economic situation that will guarantee us money. It is the most economically productive idea. The idea that some people are superior because of the lack of a chemical in their skin. It's an extremely important economic advantage. Racism is, and we take advantage of it at every opportunity, every day. As long as it makes money, as long as racism makes money, that's how long we will encourage racism. The day that it stops making money, we'll get rid of it. And we have to get rid of it because it's going to stop making money pretty soon now. Pretty soon it's going to be too expensive to be a racist. Because the people who are going to be running the show are going to be people who are other than what we call white. Melanaceous and melanotic people are going to be running the show. And melanemic people are going to have to change their behaviors, change their education, change their knowledge base, change their ideas about life and about human beings. They're going to have to believe. They're going to have to believe in what their religious leaders, the original ones, told them.
So we all think
the golden rule doesn't work. The golden rule doesn't work. The platinum rule works. Do unto others as others would have you do unto them. Everybody isn't like me. Not everybody thinks the way I do. So I have to realize how they think and what's going to affect them if I make some of these statements around them. Go to my website, download the typical statements and the clarification of those statements and the commitments to combat racism, and download the bibliography and read every one of the books. Don't just read the titles, read every book listed on that bibliography under racism, because that racism is what we use as the model for how we run all those other isms. Racism is the model for genderism, for sexism, for ageism, for anti-Semitism, for all of those others. We can point to, well, look at what we do where blacks are concerned. If we put a stop to racism, we will do away with the excuses for all these others. And you have to realize that words like, oh Lord, unconscious and conscious bias.
Yes.
God, deliver me from words like conscious bias and unconscious bias, because, and race is a social construct. That's a nice way to say bullshit. You need to realize that we make up words. We people with education, lots and lots of years of being in the classroom, make up words that make white people feel justified in what they're doing. We give them excuses for the way they're behaving. We say, well, this is unconscious bias. In other words, you don't know what you're thinking about. No, this isn't unconscious bias. This is conscious bias. It's time to stop calling it unconscious bias. We recognize it when it happens to us. Do we really think that people of other color groups don't recognize it when it happens to them? This business of race as a social construct is a nice way of saying, an acceptable way of saying, racism is a damn lie. Race, treating people positively or negatively based on the idea of different races, is a damned lie. It's not a social construct. It's something we came up with in order to justify the way we treat other people. It's a damn lie. There's only one race on the face of the earth, and it's time to stop teaching the lie. Am I making any sense here at all?
100%, Jane, 100% from the beginning. So again, so we all think of you as the race advocate, of your incredibly impactful diversity trainings and workshops. What is it we don't know about Jane? What would people be surprised to learn about Jane Elliott outside of your anti-racism work? 3 things not many people know about you.
Well, I don't know. Look, I'm cursed by the worst and blessed by the best.
Oh.
It's that simple. I was tolerated from 1933 until 1952. I was ignored from 1952 until 1968. And then I became vilified by my family after 1968. What happens to you as a child tells you is pretty much going to determine what you become. And we forget about that where young males of color are concerned. The way we treat them as children is going to determine a lot of what they become as adults and how they see us as adults. If you tolerate them until they're 18, and you ignore them from 18 until they're 50, and then vilify them because they start to realize that what you said to them all those years was wrong, and they become a Martin Luther King Jr., they become a Malcolm X, they become somebody who knows the truth and is no longer afraid to tell the truth, then they have to be vilified and, if necessary, destroyed. And that's exactly what we've done. We'll tolerate you as a child, but then you get up old enough to reproduce, we'll ignore you until you get old enough to make a difference, and then we'll kill you if you make a difference. I'm sorry. I hate to describe this society in that way, but I've watched it. I see young males, melanaceous and melanotic young males, being taken advantage of by the athletic department till they're 18 and then till 22, and then they are vilified because now they are of the age when they could reproduce with our melanatic children, girls. So now we have to vilify them. And if they don't live down to our expectations of them, we have to do away with them. And if we can't put them into prison, we can do away with them in another way. And it can be justified. and we can be found not guilty. If I hadn't lived this long, I wouldn't see things the way I see them. And I know that people, right, most people who are of my color group have already turned this off and will never listen to it again. But those who are left, many of those who left, who refuse to listen, will go out and buy a gun. Yes. And vent their rage at me on somebody who doesn't look like them. Mm. Because, and when I go on a college campus, when I used to, there are always those three little boys in the first two rows, and they're wearing those caps, red caps, on which in white writing it says, "Make America great again." It means make America hate again. That's what it's all about. And they're sitting there in those red caps, pointing at me like this. And I stop and I say, "Look, fellas, I know what you're talking about. You'd like to see me dead because of what I say about racism. That's all right. You can kill me. I'll get to be with my son, my husband, and my father. That won't bother me at all. But you have to realize that if you kill me because of what I do to decrease the level of racism in this country, you might make a martyr out of me, and then you might have to spend the rest of your life celebrating Jane Elliott Day once a year. Now, do you want to do that?" And then they go, "No, no, no, no." And they make their, "No, no, no." I say, "Fine, then shut up while I'm talking and listening to what I'm saying." And then they shut up. But they shouldn't have done that, because now every melanaceous and melanotic male in that room has seen who they are and how they were behaving. And those guys get over the back of their seat and run down the aisle before I finish my speech, because they know that they've been identified. Mm-hmm. And they're scared to death, and they should be scared to death. It should be a very frightening thing. It should be a life-threatening thing to treat people unfairly on the basis of your ignorance about skin color. That should be illegal. That should be something we will not tolerate in the United States of America. But in order to make that happen, we have to, number one, we have to stop calling this country America. America is everything from the northernmost point of Canada to the southernmost point of South America. All these countries, all the people who live in these countries, all of them are Americans. The United States of America is the 48 contiguous states, Alaska, Hawaii, and the islands off the southeastern coast of the United States. That is the United States of America. And the most important word in that title is the word united. We have to start calling this country the USA, or if you don't want to use all those words, all those syllables, US. US spells us. Wow. Us, the people in the United States of America. And here's another thing we have to do, and we have to do this yesterday. Take the words "under God" out of the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, because those two words come before the word indivisible. The words "under God" in the pledge, you have automatically divided us into those of us who worship the God that we think is the real God, who is an old white man with long gray beard that looks like Charlton Heston playing Moses. If you aren't one of those, you aren't a real American. We have no business putting the words "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And I used to say to my third graders, look, if you kids don't want to say the words "under God" in the pledge, you don't have to. And if you don't want to stand for the pledge, you don't have to. I had students in my classroom whose parents did not believe in praying publicly, and who did not believe in putting the words "under God" in the pledge. And they were right. We shouldn't have. Now, after you do that, take the words "in God we trust" off our money. People, if you trust in God, you don't need money. In this country, the most important color is green, which is the color of our money. We worship money. And we put "in God we trust" on our money. This is, am I crazy, or is the rest of the world insane?
I think it's amazing. So your sense of humor and a direct way of speaking makes heavy topics relatable and digestible. Jane, have you ever considered compiling some of your legendary quips and one-liners into a book of Jane Elliott?
No, because it costs money to get a book printed and published, and I wouldn't make a dime off that. But it would become famous because the boys that are running the show right now, it would be banned.
Certainly.
It would be on the list, and my name is on the list of banned speakers on college campuses. So that book would be banned. I know that. And, you know, the nice thing about not being able to speak on college campuses is when somebody calls me to do a podcast, I can say whatever I feel. You aren't paying me, and you can either turn it off or turn it on. You can edit it out of my remarks. But if you don't edit it out, then other people will hear it. And it isn't just going to be the 200 or 300 people that are in that auditorium or the 5,000 people who are in that auditorium. When you put this out there, it goes into the ether and hundreds of thousands of people can hear it. And then what if they react positively to it? We could do away with racism in your lifetime. Maybe not in mine, because mine's not going to be that much longer. But you're going to live a lot longer than I am. You know that. So that's okay. If you would start today to refuse to tolerate the intolerable. Elie Wiesel said, we must refuse to tolerate the intolerable. If it's intolerable for you, it's intolerable for me because you are one of my 30th to 50th cousins. How I allow others to treat you because of their ignorance about you, that tells how I will allow others to treat me and mine, and I won't. I won't allow people to treat me badly because of their ignorance about skin color. Yes. I won't do it. And I won't allow people around me to make racist jokes, because if I were black and told a racist joke, that'd be one thing. I'm Irish. When I tell Irish jokes, I know how strange we are. It's all right if I tell Irish jokes, but nobody else had better tell Irish jokes around me. You know, humor just goes so far, and then it turns from humor to tumor, and a tumor will kill you.
Wow, I think I will see whether I could take all these buzzwords and come out with a very special episode of Jane Elliott's quips and one-liners as an audio version myself, Jane.
Well, you go ahead, and you will be cursed by the worst and blessed by the best. Have fun with it.
Totally, Jane. I think the moment I started the podcast, I knew you decide to be different, right? Like you at the smallest scale, you know. But I just had this question, Jane. You know, you are 89, about to go 90 soon. What's your secret to staying so spirited and youthful as you continue this work? You know, your energy and passion is so infectious, Jane. Tell us.
Here's how we can cure racism. Tell people that it really energizes Jane Elliott.
So true. I will say that for sure. I will say that.
Yeah, Jane, yeah. So if people would realize that the more racist you are, the more anti-racist I become.
Yes.
You can't grow a field of corn by covering it with manure. You put it on in the spring and then you plow it under, and then you don't do that again. But if you keep on bringing the manure to the cornfield, eventually all you get is manure. Totally. You have to allow that corn to grow in a good environment. And that's what we have to do with children. You cannot continue to bombard children with the manure of racism and expect them to grow into healthy, fully functioning adults. It's not possible. They're going to be stunted in their emotional and social growth because you have overexposed them to manure, the manure of racism. Racism is BS in its most vicious form. And there is no reason for anyone to try to justify racism to me or to anybody else. There is no justification for racism. Racism is something you choose to be. You choose to be a racist. You can choose not to be a racist. Just because you're raised a racist doesn't mean you have to continue to be one. If you want to be a fully functioning human being, you've got to give up the idea of the superiority of someone based on the size, the shape, or the color of their skin. Think of that. Think of how ignorant that is.
Jen, who are the people who have been the most influential in your personal life and career that has inspired you to continue work?
My father. My father. My father would say to us, you know the difference between right and wrong. Now do the right thing, God damn it. And it's that simple. We know the difference between right and wrong. Do the right thing. And I've met some people because of this exercise that I can't list them all because they were so utterly fantastic. People that Barbara Jordan. Did you ever meet Barbara Jordan? You probably don't know who she is. No, so a whole lot of people that I have met. C.T. Vivian. Did you ever meet C.T.? Do you know who C.T. Vivian was? C.T. Vivian was marched with Martin Luther King Jr., one of the most intelligent, gentle, gracious men I've ever known. It's just, you could go down the line of people who have experienced this ugliness of racism and still are fine, thoughtful human beings. Colonel Ronald Joe of Tallahassee, Florida, one of the finest men it has ever been my extreme joy to know and to appreciate. People that you will probably never hear of because all they do is just do the right thing. You know the difference between right and wrong. Do the right thing, goddammit. My father would have enjoyed knowing Colonel Ronald Joe because he does the right thing. There are so many of them. Oh Lord, the people I worked with on the White House Conference on Children and Youth in 1970, some of the finest people it has ever been my total joy to work with. Shirley Chisholm, good Lord, how could you think of somebody more? Pat Okura. These people knew, I think back to those days and I think how fortunate I was that they would accept me, that they would educate me, yes. that they would let me know where I made a mistake, gently, kindly, but determinedly. And that's what they did. The people at US West who ran the pluralism workshop, people of different colors, different genders, different sexual orientations, were just absolutely brilliant in their kindness and their acceptance and their willingness to educate me. And they didn't write books about it. They just did it. Their lives, every day of their life was a book, was a chapter in a book. They wrote another chapter for me every day I was with them. It was fantastic. I have been, among all men, most severely blessed.
Totally, Jane. That's a lot of blessings in your life, and I wish you the blessings to continue, Jane. Jane, many activists burn out from the enormity of confronting systemic injustice. Where do you find the hope and renewal to continue this work after so long?
I have 8 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. And I look at them and I realize that their parents married or adopted or reproduced in ways that are not racist. And I think, there it is. You people want to tell me that skin color is an indication of intelligence? Yes. I got news for you. Look at all those brown kids. Look at those brown, part Saudi Arabian, brown, part Hispanic, brown, part black children and grandchildren, and you tell me that skin color is a determiner of intelligence and worth as human beings. You're wrong. You're just as wrong as you can be. And my dad would say, no, and he said after he saw the film, you're not going to say those things around me. Jane, I'm not going to listen to those things anymore. And I'd say, Dad, good for you. But what are you going to do when your sons come home? Oh, by God, I'll go in the other room. And he would. When the crap started, he'd just get up and walk in the other room, turn on television. Because that was better than having to have a fight with his sons over racism. You just walk away. Because there's no sense in, no sense in beating this up all the time, arguing about this. They're wrong. Let them be wrong. That's their problem. I don't have to try to convince them. And I don't have, I am a pariah in my family because I have ruined their reputation in their hometown. There's only 1,000 people in that town. How many people could hate me? It's only 1,000. But it was extremely difficult for my parents to have me for a child. because I stopped being a child. And when you give up racism, you stop being a child.
Totally.
Racism depends on you maintaining your ignorance and your childlike behaviors and your childlike mentality. If you still believe in the superiority of people based on the color of their skin, you are still an infant. Emotionally, educationally, mentally, you are still in your infancy. It's time to grow up, folks. The future is upon us. You have no choice. You have no choice. Jews will not replace us. They were here first. Blacks will not replace us. They were here first. In order for you to do away with all blacks, you have to commit suicide. Because every one of us is nothing but somebody whose ancestors faded over the centuries. We all started out black. Get over it. Relax.
Jane, you have spent decades, last two questions, Jane, you have spent decades, like 60 years conducting diversity training and anti-racism workshops and being a strong advocate of what, as you rightly said, do the right thing. In your experience, what give you hope that we can build more a just and equitable society, or what still concerns you?
Last week on television, I was watching television because I watch television a lot because nobody wants to talk to me. I watch the news a lot. And somebody said, one of my little brown kids. And I thought, there it is. She called that kid brown. One of my little brown students. And I thought, we're getting there. It's coming. Come on, people. This is the way it is. We're all descendants of those. We're all shades of brown. She said the word brown to describe a child. Oh, good Lord. Thank you, God. The minute I heard that, I thought, I can die now. Wherever you are, I'm ready to go now, because now they're using the word brown instead of the word black. A couple of young women called me several years ago and said, Miss Elliott, from now on, when we have to fill in a form and ask for our race, we're going to put human. I said, that's a good idea. What are you going to put? Ask for skin color. One of them said, I'm going to put mocha. The other one said, I'm going to put chocolate. I said, congratulations. Those are skin colors. Mocha and chocolate are skin colors.
So silly, Jane.
Think of it.
Yes.
Mocha and chocolate are beautiful words for skin colors. It has nothing to do with being black and being savage and evil.
Yes.
And my skin is spotted brown. It has nothing to do with being good and pure. It has to do with being a member of the human race, all of whom are shades of brown.
Yes.
And teachers said it about 2 weeks ago, and I'm thinking, help us, Lord, it's going to happen. It is inevitable. There is no way we can avoid it. There is no way you can deny the truth for any longer. We've denied it for 480 years, 440 years. It's time to stop denying the truth and start looking at the truth, enjoying the truth, and relaxing and loving one another. No. See, I have a problem with love, because if you read it backward, it's evil. That is the right way to spell evil, but it's what it says. EVOL is evil. So if we would really start to appreciate one another and recognize one another and enjoy one another as human beings who deserve equitable treatment under the law, we can turn this thing around. But we won't until we do that.
Totally, Jane. What a powerful thing. Jane, I think, as you rightly said, society's understanding is growing. And yes, there are still a lot of learning still to do, but there is hope at the end of the tunnel. You have shared a lot of very, very powerful and important messages in this podcast, Jane. But if you need to pick up, these are the 3 key takeaways from me. What advice would you give to any, could be children, could be adults, could be young people who are just what we call normal people? And secondly, what advice would you give to people who are standing up for the causes that you believe in?
Stop using the language of the 1500s. Stop talking about interracial, biracial, multiracial. Stop using those languages. Stop using those words. Words are the most powerful weapon devised by humankind. We use them to destroy people all day, every day. If you don't have enough iron in your body to keep you healthy, you're called anemic. If you don't have enough melanin in your skin to protect you from the dangerous rays of the sun, you are melanemic. If you have more melanin in your skin, you're melanaceous, which rhymes with gracious and spacious and efficacious, and it means more melanin in your skin. If you have a lot of melanin in your skin, you're called melanotic. You're not called black and white and yellow and brown and red. You are called either melanemic, melanaceous, or melanotic. There is no positive or negative connotation in any of those words. They are simply descriptions of the amount of melanin in your skin. Melanin is an extremely valuable chemical, particularly now with climate change. As the sun's rays get stronger and stronger, more and more people are going to need more and more melanin in their skin in order to stay alive. This situation is going to solve the problem of racism. It's going to take care of itself. You wait long enough, these things get settled by that superior person who was over there saying, well, you folks know the difference between right and wrong. Now do the right thing, goddammit. And that's what that higher power is saying to us. I've given you lots of time to get this right. You got a chance now. We'll blame it on climate change, but you've got a chance now to change the behaviors of human beings so that we no longer have this horrible change in climate. If we change our use of fossil fuel, if we change the way we treat one another, if we change the way we talk about colonizers and colonizing, and realize that we were all members of the same race, we could change this thing. Remember, without blacks, you'd have no whites. Without Jews, you'd have no Christians. And without men, without women, you'd have no men. Just remember those three things. If you remember those three things, you do away with anti-Semitism, sexism, and racism in one little lesson plan.
Listen, Jane, what a privilege to have you as a guest in the podcast. Jane, as we end this episode, Jane, thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Stay healthy, stay happy. And, as you can see here, the world is changing for the positive. And you will definitely see it through what it means to be. So to the listeners, that brings us to the close of a truly inspiring conversation with the one and only Jane Elliott. Jane, your lifetime of tireless work to expose and dismantle prejudice has given so many people the courage to face uncountable truths. Continue to do that by forcing us to confront our own biases head on. You have set countless people, including myself, on the path towards greater open-mindedness, empathy, and respect for all. So, Jane.
Wait a minute. There's something we have to say before we end this. Prejudice isn't the problem.
Yes.
Discrimination is the problem. Prejudice causes discrimination. Prejudice doesn't hurt you. Discrimination is a behavior. It kills people every day. Prejudice is not the problem. It's necessary to prejudge situations on a daily basis. When there's a lightning storm, I prejudge that and say to myself, I'll stay inside. Prejudice is the problem. Discrimination is the problem. When you act on your prejudices, that's the problem. Sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I have to get that in there.
No, totally, Jane. Totally. Again, discrimination is a word that's been used in many different forms, and I thought it's better it comes from your mouth rather than my mouth. So thank you, Jane.
Sorry about that.
No, Jane, I think it's important. It's important. Jane, your life's work gives us hope that one day the dream of equitable world will become a reality. So thank you for blessing us with your fierce wisdom and courage and witty humor, because it's not easy to talk dense topics like this without a sense of humor, and I'm glad that you did. So this concludes another vital episode of Baachu Talk Equity Matters. Stay with us as we continue to drive for lasting justice or equality and fight against discrimination. Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you. Look after yourself. Stay healthy, stay happy, and inspire us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.